But in terms of the actual spending, there were like Gucci handbags, there were like high-end cafe, there were even skateboards.
I think there was some very high-end luxury cars in the list as well.
Yep.
This is a quote from Andrew Wilkie. These documents show that money is used to do the kind of shopping that would embarrass a Kardashian.
The story I heard was that Pat Mesiti was up on stage preaching. Then a prostitute walked in, about to give her life to the Lord. And then apparently this woman said to one of the attendants walking around, "That guy is my client," referring to Pat Mesiti.
Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to my channel, not Phoebe's channel. We're fighting over whose channel this is on today.
Your channel.
But I've done the intro, so it's on mine. Today I'm joined by the fabulous Phoebe Rose, who you may remember from previous horrific encounters. And we're also joined by the fabulous Damien up here.
Hello, everyone.
Who is going to enthrall us with a little introduction right now. Damien, you go ahead.
Oh.
Who are you? Who the hell are you?
I am one of Phoebe's weird friends. My name is Damien. I am the host of the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast, alongside wrestling with... So the Tall Friendly Atheist podcast is my personal podcast where I discuss religion and parenting and just things that happen to be on my mind. I also co-host Wrestling with Atheism, where I discuss my love of professional wrestling. It's still real to me, damn it, alongside general religious topics. And then lucky last is that I co-host an Australian politics podcast called Let's Save the Governor General, which I co-host with the lovely Phoebe and Clancy. When I'm not doing that, I I have 2 teenage kids. I'm in a mixed cultural marriage. I'm currently unemployed because I lost my job last week.
And you're an author.
The book.
I am an author, yes.
The book.
Yes, in my self-publishing phase that I went through in my early 40s, I wrote a book called The Best Religion for the Task at Hand, which discusses morality. It was a counter to an article by Creation Ministries International that asked the question, is the Bible an immoral book? And so I decided to put a typewriter to computer, and I pumped out a book that discusses morality in light of humanism and the Bible as comparative morality systems.
For those of you that have been following the wonderful multi-level marketing joys on Emma's channel, it goes back, 10 years now? When did you start doing MLM stuff?
Like 5 years, probably.
Okay, 5 years ago. You debunked everything from the body shop to just straight up multi-level marketing scams to everything else in between. And we've moved on to a man named Andrew Reynolds and his joy of joys, that is the Millionaires Boot Camp. That was at the O2. I was there at the O2 in 2011. And the wonderful Pat Mesiti, our joy of joys, Pat Mesiti was there. And we went down the rabbit hole and we have opened up the Pat Mesiti files. And this failed Hillsong Pastor is your neck of the woods, Damien.
He is, yes. So, very brief introduction. Pat Mesiti was the head youth pastor in Hillsong and the organisation that preceded Hillsong for about 20 years. So, any young Christian, or anyone who was a young Christian in Australia, particularly around the late 90s, would have heard of the organisation Youth Alive, which was like the Christian arm, which eventually morphed into Planet Shakers. But when it was still Youth Alive, Pat Mesiti was like the head of that particular arm of Hillsong. It turned out in around the mid 2000s. I think I'll have to look at my notes. He was kicked out of Hillsong for engaging in paid sex with people who wasn't his wife.
Before or after it was legal in whatever state he was in?
It's always been legal. Actually, no, that doesn't matter because you're right. So now he runs his own church, which I think we'll get into that in a sec. But he also came to fame during the coronavirus, where he hosted a series of forums called Prayer and Pushback, which were really right-wing Christian anti-vax rhetoric is probably the easiest way of describing that.
Yeah.
And yes,
this is why we sort of stumbled across. We were looking at Pat Mesiti, Phoebe, and I, as in his How to Become Rich, millionaire maker style stuff, and discovered his videos.
Does Pat Mesiti become rich as well? Does he?
Well,
I never got that impression from him. He seems like a very ordinary, down-to-earth guy.
Was it Pat Mesiti who wanted to make 10 millionaires? Was that right?
Yes,
that was his goal, something like that.
No, he wanted to make 1,000 millionaires.
1,000? Oh, because 10 wouldn't be a very exciting goal.
He wanted to make 1,000 millionaires, and he said each one of those would then make 10 more millionaires.
That's right, until we're all millionaires and everything is sunshine and rainbows. That's right, yeah. So we found one of his videos on his blog where he's like, social media is repressing my content because of my views, so I need you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And we were like, oh, that's a bit weird. He seems a bit like anti-COVID measures and stuff. What's going on? So yeah, let's shed some light on that so we can understand.
And then Pauline Hanson turned up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
As happens.
As happens, Pauline Hanson just turned up. Oh my god.
Indeed.
And so did Clive Palmer.
Yeah, let's not. But no, so currently Pat Mesiti is the head of Reborn Ministries. So if you go to rebornministries.tv, you'll see he has his own church. And even under the Who We Are, Pat Mesiti is one of the world's most celebrated speakers. It even says so on his website. He is a highly effective communicator. His passion is to equip and empower. And I say that like that because they're in capital letters on the website. Empower individuals to reach their fullest potential. His expertise is to shift mindsets and to build bigger people to produce results.
Just bigger people.
I could do with that. I could do with that.
Yeah.
I'd like a couple of inches, please.
I'd like you to take
have a few donuts.
Take a couple off of me and give them to Emma.
It's not, you know what, the background of his website is not, we noticed last time his main website is, like his personal website is all the same, and his books and everything is all the same, like 3 pictures of him from like 10 years ago.
Yep.
This is actually, that actually looks a lot more updated, that picture of his face.
Because he's always had that, just those vibes, just the way, like short little angry guy vibes is probably the way I do it.
Same.
But I will say he is a very effective communicator. He is a fantastic speaker. He really knows how to, and that might be a product of the Hillsong, thing that he went through, is that, in Hillsong, almost everyone there who rises up is a dynamic speaker and they know how to do the cadence and, really sell the thing.
So for that, those of us watching who aren't from the land down under, as the song said, who are Hillsong Ministries?
Hillsong, if you don't know who Hillsong Ministries are, you've been under a rock. They're the Australian megachurch. They started off in the late 70s, early 80s in the outer northwestern suburbs of Sydney, which is very hilly, very mountainous because it's on the edge of the Blue Mountains, hence why it's called Hills, because it's on a hill. So it started off as Hills Christian Life Centre, and then they realised that and one of the things that they did well was music. So eventually they grew, those guys, and eventually they grew their music arm under the banner Hillsong, as in Hills Song. I know, it's genius, absolute genius. Oh. And so the church eventually became called Hillsong, and so Pat Mesiti was part of Hillsong up until now. Let me get my notes out, and I'll see when he got busted.
I had no idea it was the origin of Hillsong was so literal.
Hang on a minute. Look at that map, Emma. Just zoom in on that map. The United Kingdom isn't on that map.
Oh no! Rejected.
Republic of Ireland, and nor is Iceland, and there is no Greenland either.
I guess.
Go Europe. Click on Europe for us if you could.
No, it just highlights.
So God loves Russia. Okay, I see God has a thing for.
Oh,
But
so
we're
we're in
not-
the
we're not-
list.
We're in the
Okay,
list,
United
but
Kingdom.
we don't exist. We're like,
And the list
now I
is
know
not on
how
the
New- now I know how New Zealand feel.
Yeah.
Or Tasmania, because there's even Tasmania on that map. It's like, holy,
I feel like we
Look,
were there and we've been wiped out.
yeah, it's like
Somebody took the eraser.
it's like the UK, Ireland, Iceland, and Greenland are not there.
Just not there.
So Pat Mesiti came through the Hillsong, which is the Australian mega church, and Hillsong was started by, I have to say it, unconvicted pedophile priest Frank Houston, who passed the reins down to his son Brian, who was recently acquitted of charges of concealing child sex offences in a city court. So that drama has finally played out. However, that does not stop Brian Houston himself from being, a somewhat disreputable person. It just means that he was found not guilty in a court of law of whatever it was that he was charged with. So Emma, if you click on that link in the private
Yes, I believe this is what Phoebe and I stumbled upon.
Before we carry on, Brian Houston, he may not have been found guilty on those charges, but he did quite quickly plead guilty to a driving under the influence charge.
But that was in America, I believe, in California, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, but still, we need to make sure that we don't think that he got away with everything.
No, and the financial reports from Hillsong have actually been tabled in Australia's federal parliament by independent MP Andrew Wilkie, because the financial reports got leaked. And I think we actually covered it briefly on Let's Save the Governor General, where there were, holy cheeseballs, there were like
3 or 4 days worth of administration by the parliamentary staff at the federal parliament in Australia,
correct,
just to get it into the record.
Yes, but in terms of the actual spending, there were like Gucci handbags, there were like high-end cafe, there were even skateboards.
I think there was some very high-end luxury cars in the list as well.
Yep, and like travel from Australia to Texas to London to
Wellington,
Europe, and then Wellington. Yeah, it was all
by private jet, all paid for by Hillsong.
No, I think it was business class. I think it was actually business class.
I thought it said business jet on it.
Only the best for Brian. No, Brian is so humble that he goes from first down to business. That's kind of the guy Brian is.
Wow.
But when having had a look through the spending and seen some of the spending that was happening, you just go,
yes, it's quite a. And look, I've been in churches that ran on the smell of an oily rag, and so like being in those churches and then seeing what Brian and his wife and his top 2 assistants were spending on, it's like.
This is a quote from Andrew Wilkie. These documents show that money is used to do the kind of shopping that would embarrass a Kardashian.
Hey, there we go.
That is worth putting on a like a bumper sticker.
On a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
T-shirt, bumper sticker, cup. So that is the environment that Pat Mesiti came from. And I would have no doubt that Pat Mesiti would have maybe lived high on the hog, as we may say, on Hillsong's expense to feather his own nest, as make life better for himself.
But speaking of convictions, though, Pat Mesiti is not free from his own convictions.
No, and this is where Emma may need to bring up a.
Because Pat Mesiti.
God, there's a lot of adverts.
So okay, I may have got my years wrong, but it was somewhere
2006.
mid 2000s or mid 2016. Yeah, so he was caught. Now the story I heard was that Pat Mesiti was up on stage preaching. Then a prostitute walked in, about to give her life to the Lord, because that's what happens when you walk into a Hillsong church, is you're about to give your life to the Lord. And then apparently this woman said to one of the attendants walking around, "That guy is my client," referring to Pat Mesiti. And it turns out that in Hillsong, if you have consensual sex with someone who is not your wife, you go. It has to be non-consensual sex, and then you get to stay.
I was mid nod when you said that. I was like, no, stop.
No, because let me explain. So Pat Mesiti here was patronizing or frequenting prostitutes, and I take it that's all consensual. Out he goes. Carl Lentz, the Hillsong pastor in New York, was having an affair with engaging in consensual sex with a woman who wasn't his wife. Out he goes. But then there was a 60 Minutes report roughly middle of last year. The thing was called Hillsong Hell, where apparently one of the Hillsong ministry leaders had groped a woman. So this guy apparently had a bit too much to drink at a youth gathering or something, and had inappropriately touched a woman. The woman then complained to Hillsong. Hillsong took 6 months to go to the police with the allegations of what this guy did. And then what Hillsong did was the person they put in charge of mentoring this woman who had made the complaint was the wife of the person who touched the woman. Okay. I know that's. Yes, and he still held on to his job as, I think he is actually now head of HR at Hillsong or something like that. Yes, yep, that's go watch the 60 Minutes report Hillsong Hell, and you'll get the details of what happened. And then just to make it a little bit worse, so the woman complained to her dad, so this woman was from the States, and so she was cut off from her family and all that. It somehow got out that this woman was abused when she was younger as well. So Brian Houston put out a tweet basically referring to the fact that this woman had been abused earlier in her life as a justification for why he didn't go to the cops or something. It was a little bit, it was a little bit, I thought, tasteless for Brian Houston to make that public. And then the second incident was there was a woman who claimed that after a midweek church service that she was literally raped by a pastor or a youth pastor of a church, and that didn't. The guy there still apparently has his job at Hillsong.
Wow,
such a weird sense of priorities.
So this is why I say at Hillsong, if you have consensual sex, oh no, oh dear, out you go. But if you grope or assault someone,
but here's the question. So Pat Mesiti is part of this larger than life church. Mm-hmm. How does he rise to prominence in the Australian culture?
Well, in all fairness, you wouldn't really know of him unless you know of him. That's the thing. The only reason you would know, if you weren't in Hillsong, the only reason you know of him is from these newspaper reports, like what Emma had put up, was that, hold on, and because he was a Hillsong pastor, the headline is Hillsong pastor, admits assaulting wife. And I think that's one of the links that we've got there as well, Emma. Yes, so you had that up before. Yeah, so he admits assaulting his wife. And so you see right there, Hillsong preacher Pasquale Mesiti admits assaulting wife.
Hang on, I would never have thought his name was Pasquale. Hang on a second.
Well, because he's Italian. He's Italian, you see. So that, if that's what I said, the only reason you probably know of Pat Mesiti is if you were a young Christian in the late 90s or early 2000s, because he was the head of Hillsong. He was the head of Youth Alive. And before that, I think it was called Power Ministries or something. Had this really weird name. Let me see if I can find what exactly it was. Okay, so Pat was the founder and director of Youth Alive, attracting crowds of over 15,000 people at each event, and saw over 2,000 young people in local high schools make a decision for Christ every 3 months. Pat was one of the founders of what is now today Hillsong Music and Hillsong College, formerly known as Power Ministries International and Power Ministries College.
Power!
Power.
Well, this is a funkier website.
This is much more.
Yeah, because they had to reach the youth. You know, had to reach the young people. Yeah, so you can click on one of those states and see what it comes up. Let's see what.
It doesn't do it. Just okay. Oh, the site can't be reached. Okay.
But yeah, so and the reason I got confused, like if they're still going, is because Planet Shakers kind of took over that youth function in Hillsong.
Okay.
So you still have the Youth Alive events, which like had concerts where the kids would come and exactly just like that. Yep, so the kids are screaming and
screaming.
Looks fun.
Hitting drums and they are fun. I actually didn't mind them. It's like alcohol and drug free, and a safe place for you to listen to some wholesome music.
Cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of like the cool thing that you like, so you could say that, I went to a concert on the weekend.
I'm down with it, every other normal person.
You probably wouldn't do that.
No, I also probably wouldn't wear obnoxious red contact lenses or anything.
Who would do that?
Or horns. No, maybe probably do that.
That.
Yeah, so whereas Planet Shakers kind of like grew up from the Assemblies of God model and then became part of the Hillsong conglomeration.
Because when Emma and I were going through the Pat Mesiti model, there was a large smell of...
Just a large smell. Oh, look at this. Whoa. Whoa, that is mesmerizing.
There's some HTML5 doing its job there.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on. I am listening.
There was a very large smell.
Is that spider like running things in your head at the moment?
The spider's getting distracted. Sorry, you go ahead.
Because there was a very large smell of seed your money. Seed money. And that's where we kind of went down. Hang on, is this person a religious individual? So does he do a lot of that kind of give me money straight up through Hillsong? Is that a thing that Hillsong does, is just give Hillsong money and they will give it back to you like seed money, or is it just give us a donation?
So in Australia, like if we don't get as bad as what it is in the States where, a preacher will say sow a seed of $1,000 and within 30 days, whatever, like that is, we would call that false advertising. And for some weird reason, the Yanks just don't seem to, have a problem with that. I don't get it. I don't get it. But
the reason that fellow Americans in this country where I am at the moment don't have a problem with that is because it's protected religious speech under the First Amendment.
But whereas what you can do, you can pester for donations, you can, kind of hype up. And I remember from my time in churches was that like one of the marks of a good preacher was his ability or their ability to, encourage the people to give. And it looks like Pat Mesiti was really good at encouraging people to give.
He was so good, in fact, he got invited to the O2, formerly known as the Millennium Dome in London, to give a speech. He sold marketing products on how to become a millionaire.
Let me get up his personal website, because it's so... These things make sense to me separately, right? Pat Mesiti as a how to become rich entrepreneur guy, and then Pat Mesiti as a religious foundations guy. At what point? How did he? This is what's driving me
actually,
crazy.
Emma, you make a very good point, because if you didn't know he was if I look at his personal website, there's very little to indicate that he's religious at all.
Exactly, they seem so separate. It's really it's only when you watch his videos and look him up that it starts.
And then you start looking up his links to other videos and his links to religion and his links to very religious Australian politicians and very right-wing Australian politicians.
We should get into that in a sec, but yes.
And
I don't know how
there was a clear delineation somewhere.
Yes.
Between his money advocacy and his faith advocacy.
Not his money advocacy, his willingness to teach people how to accelerate their income. He's an income acceleration coach, damn it.
There he is.
There we go. This is all you need to know about Pat. He is a highly effective communicator and most notably, note this down, an income acceleration coach.
Most notably, not most notably a former Hillsong pastor.
Not most notably a domestic abuse convicted man.
No, not someone who goes to the knock shop on church money, or presumably on church money.
Not somebody who has a headline in certain newspapers that are owned by Rupert Murdoch as sex addict.
No.
I guess my assumption is that this is a way to not alienate non-Christians, from his money-making stuff, to make it secular.
I would say so too. Because I notice here, he's an Australian icon in high demand around the world as a keynote speaker and presenter.
True.
Yes. The thing is, though, he was at the O2. He was at the O2, and he was there with a whole host of others. I mean, Andrew Reynolds put this conference on, and it was a 2-day conference.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat Mesiti was one of the headline speakers.
Really? Who else was there?
He was number one. Pat Mesiti was the first.
Holy
Pat
shit.
Mesiti was the first.
Okay.
I mean, there's a list of about 10 of them. And Pat Mesiti was the very first one.
Go back to that website. Please go back to that website, because you didn't scroll down far enough. You need to scroll down. Scroll down. Pat has spoken for and shared the platform globally with. Check out some of those names.
Yeah, that he's got. So we won't play it again because we watched it last time. But Damien, you should watch it after we're done here. That he's got like Pat Mesiti has his show reel of him as a speaker, and it's like a narrator, and it's pictures of him shaking hands with these people, and it's amazing.
It is
weird. Sir Richard Branson. He's hung out with Sir Richard Branson and Donald Trump and Dennis Waitley and Captain Jerry. Who's Captain Jerry Coffee?
Jerry Coffee.
Captain Jerry Coffee.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies to the captain.
And Charlie Tremendous Jones. Don't forget the Tremendous. Morris Goodman, the Miracle Man. That seems...
He's trying to raise 10,000 millionaires, not 1,000. 10,000.
So gone from 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000.
I really underestimated his goals.
He will shift your mindset, touch your heart, and increase your wealth.
It'll touch something. Yeah. I don't know.
That's a bit disturbing.
That's from a sex addict. Yeah, I'm sure he will touch something. Pat Mesiti launched a website called Prayer, or a forum called Prayer and Pushback, which is we see this. I think this is the latest one that came. I don't know exactly when this one came out, but if you click here to watch on YouTube, we should just watch it right now and be overwhelmed with it.
We saw this advertised on Pat Mesiti's website when we were looking at it before.
But there was also, because this is one that we. On Let's Save the Governor General, I'm going to plug that again. We actually discussed that, and there was let me see if we can find whereabouts, who actually turned up.
LGBTIQ TV agenda. What?
Yes. Oh, you're in that, category.
LGBTIQ TV. It's the TV on the end I've never seen.
What's the second T and the V?
Agenda
television.
Vandals.
So it says that now they're renewing their efforts with the LGBTIQ TV agenda, including, quote, drag storytime, end quote, aimed at children aged 1 to 6 years old. There's even a push from the Greens in Victoria to allow minors and pregnant women to access the state's sole supervised injection room in North Richmond.
Yes, which is, I don't know about that. But yeah, scroll down a little bit, a bit more. Where is his, here we go. That name on the bottom right has been mentioned on Let's Say the Governor General once or twice.
And that name on the top left has been mentioned a few times.
The about is very telling.
Catherine Deves. Okay. What I'm going to do is I will
notoriety
fill this in for you.
itself.
I'll fill this in about the speaker. Failed right-wing lunatic anti-trans nutcase that stood for the LNP at the last federal election and got her backside handed to her by Zali Steggall.
Actually, Phoebe, you have left off a little bit there. She was what we call a captain's pick.
Oh,
so,
yes,
if I say the word captain's pick, does that mean anything to you?
Nothing.
It does to me.
Okay, so in Australian politics, a captain's pick is where the leader of a political party uses their authority to assert that a particular person can run in a seat, overriding the will of the local branch,
Okay.
or even the state directorate. So at the last federal election, Catherine Deves was Scott Morrison's captain's pick for the seat that was held by former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. And she was selected almost specifically because of her, I suppose, strident anti-trans views.
Yes.
Right.
So it's not so much that she is, anti-trans, it's more she was selected because she was anti-trans. See you on the inside, Pat Mesiti.
See you on the inside?
See you on the inside.
See you on the inside.
That's it.
It does feel very, how can I say it? It does feel...
Scummy?
That wasn't the word I was going to use, but it's a very accurate word. It does feel very much like
Right-wing,
a one-nation future.
Yeah,
That's how I can see this. So if Pauline Hanson was ever to, win the ballot box, this is how I imagine a Pauline Hanson One Nation Party future would look.
that will be like the minister, the cabinet.
Yes. How does this side of Pat Mesiti, you know him from, and his millionaire making stuff meld together with you? How does it meld with you?
Me personally, it's like there's 3 different Pat Mesitis.
That's exactly
it's
what
like
it feels like to me.
Yeah.
Pat Mesiti is a very busy guy. When he's not, teaching 10,000 people to be millionaires, he's the pastor of a church. When he's not the pastor of a church, he is trying to reignite democracy in Australia. As you do, just like a hobby. He must have a very effective team behind him, I must say. That's
It's
probably
bizarre. It is like he's got 3 separate masks, and they only very occasionally come together, and then you look at it like, hold on a minute.
Because I remember vaguely Pat Mesiti on stage at the O2.
Okay.
He was very, very engaging, but he did give some very odd analogies.
Such as?
You aren't thinking about this part of your body right now. Please stand up and imagine your left toe inflated.
What? The actual... Okay, and the point of that was... The point of it
was that we do things subconsciously and they just happen, and we don't feel every part of our body all the time. And it's just like, that's why we don't always feel our finances and stuff.
Okay.
I feel my finances. I feel them real hard.
I feel my own as well. But it was a very odd experience because I did feel like I was being evangelized at, but I didn't realise that that's what I was feeling at the time. Pat Mesiti came across as, how can I say it, one of the less radical speakers.
Really? When Pat Mesiti's something's got to give.
But he was one of those ones. He would quite happily flog you his products. That all ended at 7, remember?
Okay, all right.
£997 for this package.
I just, for context, just for the full extent of how much of the how to become rich stuff Pat Mesiti has done. This is all his books. Just on
Attitudes and Altitudes. Go back up. There was Attitudes and Altitudes. How to have a millionaire mindset.
Opportunity Knot.
Pathway to Prosperity. There is not one religious. Maybe Power Principles Arise Above Adversity. That might be the.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were all completely devoid of religion. Honestly.
So
except the one soaring higher. Is it maybe the soaring higher? Maybe, the wake up and dream might be the. See what power principles. See what that. If you want to jump on click on the Amazon.
Let me share
It does, because that is a smorgasbord of the kind of things that were being sold to me at the O2. They were, these are available. I am Pat Mesiti. You buy this smorgasbord of stuff, and along with every other person there, buy my discs and CDs of this and this and this, and it was just a very odd carry on.
Okay.
I think even this is, let's see if there's any reviews.
Void of.
There's no
go back up him. Okay, that photo. Yep, that's and look there. His passion is to capital letters equip and capital letters empower.
And to capital letters shift mindsets and build bigger
people. Yes.
KFC is building bigger people.
So is McDonald's.
Yes.
Do you think Pat Mesiti and the Colonel are in bed together? Not literally, but do you think they're strange bedfellows?
Based on his...
that'd be...
Getting back to Pat Mesiti here, and the whole reason why we're actually talking about Pat Mesiti is, where is he now? Here he is.
He's on Instagram.
Been thinking about our nation Australia, a lot going on in my mind kind of overworking a bit, but still silence, and the silence of the church on important matters. And quite frankly, it is a bit frustrating. Let me just say this about silence. Number one, silence is basically empowering. Number two, silence strengthens oppression. Number three, silence gives approval to bad behavior. Silence is betrayal. Just remember, and I want to give you a biblical illustration of this. We say that Peter betrayed Judas. Sorry about this. It's early in the morning here. That Peter betrayed Jesus when the cock crowed 3 times. But John was there all along, and he said nothing. His silence was complicit to what was going on. Now, we've got a leader in Anthony Albanese, who wants you and your children and future generations to sign up to a constitutional change for a document he has not read.
Okay, that's enough of Pat
Mesiti's voice for a minute. So what Pat Mesiti's prattling on about there is the upcoming voice referendum in Australia. And the more I hear lunatics like Pat Mesiti and others, the more likely I am to support the voice referendum, because if those lunatics are the people who go, stop this immediately, I must be going,
yes.
Yeah, I can't be on the same side as you.
But having said that, there's some really bad stuff on the other side as well. But yeah, no, but this is where I think Pat Mesiti is taking a leaf out of the book of the Americans, in that he is mixing religion and politics as well. And this is in Australian Christianity, there's always been like a small element that has mixed, right wing, I suppose, ultra conservatism with religion, and using religion as like the battering ram for, those kind of conservative political or ultra conservative political values. And yeah, the fact that Pat is still doing. So you look at that and you can kind of say, okay, Pat is maybe a pastor, maybe he's more of a politician in that aspect. And he could well be a Christian as well. You wouldn't know as a pastor, but yeah, maybe definitely a Christian. But yeah,
it's just so interesting that on his video blogs, I mean, the way he talks is very vague and metaphorical anyway, so it's hard to follow. I mean, that like list of 6 or 7 things that silence is betrayal.
Pulled out of his ass.
What are you talking about? Like, it's just interesting to me that he is a lot freer with mixing at least the religious and political. It doesn't seem to cross over exactly with the wealth empowerment stuff.
No,
he's got
2 different.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's got the sort of the business sense or whatever to not bring any of that up in his money-making stuff. Which almost
Yes.
it just feels weird to me. It just feels like almost a bit deceptive. I don't know. It's just strange.
Well, if you never ask, I think as Scott Morrison said, he never asked me about it. And if you don't ask him, if you don't get asked the question, you can't answer and you can't lie. Yeah, I think like I see two different Pat Mesitis. I see Pat Mesiti, the wealth coach who has a dozen books on Amazon. Probably just the same book with different titles.
Mm.
And then he's on Instagram, preaching like a right wing gospel is the way I see it. So he probably mixes like the politics and the religion because those two go hand in hand.
Mm.
But then he's probably used some of the tricks he learnt from Hillsong as a business to then be, to find 10,000 people to be millionaires.
Who will then each make 10 more millionaires.
Oh, exactly. So 10,000 people being millionaires is like $10 billion in the economy. Don't you want that?
Don't you want each of those 10,000 people to make 10 more millionaires to give you,
exactly.
wait for it, 100,000 millionaires?
Man, we're gonna.
I can't wait.
I can't wait to become one of those 100,000 millionaires.
The Alfa Romeo dealership is going to be like run out of cars.
There you go. I guess that's the two faces of Pat Mesiti.
Or three.
Yeah.
The 2/3, because the political and religious seem to cross over in a way
And
that
the
financial
criminal
doesn't. And the criminal.
And the wife beater, and that singlet he was wearing kind of came across as very wife beaterish.
I think that you would in America you would call that a wife beater, right?
Yes.
You would, yes.
It's kind of funny.
You most certainly would.
What are your thoughts? Pat Mesiti. So what is Pat Mesiti to you, ladies? Apart from a person who was at a pyramid scheme conference.
Well, he, at the pyramid scheme conference, was someone who came across as very slimy.
Okay.
He was very slimy on the stage, but he wasn't the most radical or unbelievable or extreme.
Okay. Who would those titles go to?
You have to tune into the rest of the series to find out.
Oh, okay. That's fair enough.
Pat Mesiti's number one. We've got a lot to get through.
We've got a lot to get to. And don't forget, there's a Bentley being given away at the end.
He's what was the old Churchill saying? He's a mystery shrouded in a puzzle, wrapped in an enigma.
Yeah, I think that's what Pat Mesiti to me is, an enigma. He's got too much going on. He's got people. I mean, I've looked at a lot of ultra right wing political sort of commentators, ultra religious, and sometimes those do crossover. Often those crossover, and then I've looked at the financial, and he's just he could easily focus on one of the 6 different things that he does and make that his sort of persona, but he just does too much. It's too much. He needs to stop.
So we're bringing the 2.5 faces of Pat Mesiti together to make a mega Pat.
A mega Pat.
A mega Pat. Okay, I'm gonna say that that's a good conclusion, and I would like to thank Phoebe and Damien for joining. Phoebe, first of all, where can we find you? Is there anything you would like to plug?
You can find me on my personal channel, which I have plugged on here before, and you can find me with Damien every 3 weeks or so, along with a lovely lady named Clancy from the other side of the Tasman Sea, doing Let's Save the Governor General. And before anyone complains, like we have had complaints before, we are 3 Republicans and not 3 monarchists. And it did cost us an interview once.
Indeed, yes.
All right.
Indeed.
Damien, where can we find you? And what would you like?
Usually at a coffee shop or, as a... No, so I do have, if you go to anchor.fm/TFA Dad, you'll find my personal podcast. If you search for Let's Save the Governor General, you hear me and the 2 lovely ladies I have the pleasure of co-hosting and discussing politics with. And if you look for Wrestling with Atheism, you'll hear me and my buddy Josh, and sometimes special guests like Phoebe, where we discuss professional wrestling.
Oh, and in the description below, there's a link to his book.
Is there? I don't see it.
There is. It's there. You can
Oh,
look.
okay. I trust you. I absolutely trust, and I'm a what you call a failed self-published author. On top of it,
So
If
where
you
else can we
published it,
find
then
you,
you're not
Emma?
found.
So where else can we find you, Emma?
yeah.
I'm
tell
here.
us.
You're already here. You can follow me on all sorts of other places. They'll all be in the description. If you like this kind of nonsense, there will probably be a longer cut of this on Patreon. So thank you very much to patrons whose names follow. And yeah, leave your thoughts below. Questions, comments, check out Damien's book. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching.